So this is like I was thinking this is a bit of an apology post for anybody that's been watching my hair for the last month or so. I think we're kinda getting back to being it's kinda tough. I've struggled with watching some of these. So, this is the second to last section of the entire book. Now, just a reminder, I'm gonna be going back and doing chapter 12. I flipped the order of this because I am going to dedicate a lot more time to doing the sections for the manifestation component of this book, than just doing a read through. So this is the second to last section, and the titled "We're Ultimately Fulfilled Through Connection," which as I was thinking about this, as I was setting up to do this reading, I was thinking about how this book, and now, we're on page, was it 309? Almost wrapping it up. We're almost on page 309. And for the most part, this book is, and this methodology that's contained within it, is really about deep, personal, individual work. And, you know, not, like obviously, we have the stigma about being selfish. And even, I was listening to a Chris and Teeb song called First, it's like a mantra of I'm going to put myself first. My needs matter. I'm going to put myself first. And I was thinking just about how that in and of itself is highly stigmatized. I won't get into why. But so this section where, so this like second to last, there's two. The two last sections here are we're ultimately fulfilled through connection and conscious reclamation and ongoing process. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because that really points to the fact this like circles right back where you can start at the beginning again. But I want to talk a little bit. I think probably one of the best ways to exemplify this before I start reading is talking about my own experience with doing this practice and how it has, by going so much, by doing a process that really is about a reclamation and a transformation of my own like personhood, I guess, is that who it's made me with other people. And this is not, I'm certainly not alone in this. I think as somebody who's probably practiced this more in depth than at this point any person on earth to date, just, for practical reasons, is that I can speak to what happens, what's meant by transform everything. And so, I was thinking about it so just now I was having a conversation with someone and they were telling me about, they were on vacation and they got into a car accident. And that began this whole process of their spouse having a really protracted, like, very serious medical situation unfold, not related to the car accident, interestingly enough. And I thought about how for, like, I think it was about 45 minutes to an hour, that I was able to literally be fully present with this person in a way that would have been unfamiliar to me in an earlier iteration of my life. I would have been thinking about why it mattered to me, how it related to situations that I've been through, and just even being concerned about being heard, the energy that it takes to listen actively and stay really with the person. I wouldn't have that. And so I think about how from my Parinama practice, I can literally sit and I'm with that person in a very particular way. Empathizing, like really seeking to understand their experience, not interrupting. And this is not, and there's nothing forced in it. Because I don't feel I used to feel like I needed to make sure I was gonna be able to be heard, and I was gonna be able to talk about how I feel, um, in that situation. Other things like yeah, I mean, I feel like that's probably stands on its own. There's so many other examples that I can use about how this work and the tools and the practices that I have for my own personhood ultimately make me like just function at such a like magnificent level on it, like truly in relationships. And that this is ultimately like the idea. It's like, okay, we've just been through, this very long, like a year-long process that is really about a deep dive into ourselves. And the idea that this would just continue to just go on forever as this kind of exploration of ourselves, kind of, like, I guess it's sort of like a black hole kind of thing, versus even the stuff where, I was thinking about it yesterday or the day before, where I have tenants I'm a landlord, and I was thinking about how there was an issue that they needed to have fixed, and a previous iteration of myself would have been really concerned about the money. I would have been thinking a lot about the money. I've been thinking about myself, like, in terms of, like, and just that my security, my physical security within myself in a way that extends beyond the practical reality of, like, how much money there is, and, um, well, and that's, that, like, that's and that's it's true that but it didn't really matter whether I had money or not, that I would be fixated on a first hub issue of scarcity and fear of loss. And that now I really can all I'm focused on is how do we make sure that they're taken care of fully. And this has been in my practice for a long time now, but it's just being able to appreciate it and see it. So, yeah. So instead of being panicked about, "Is there gonna be enough for me?" that I am that I'm not, that I know that there's enough for me. I know there's enough for me. And that one has some, like, deeper roots that I won't get into now. So I'm gonna read now, and then we'll see what comes up. Okay. So we're ultimately fulfilled through connection. So we experience moments of insight and enlightenment throughout life that lasts for an instant, an hour, weeks, and even years. Everything about us happens in rhythms that come in cycles, phases, and waves, feast and famine. This practice is not a final destination. It's a process that's ongoing for as long as we're breathing, a method for continuous personal breakthrough and growth. There's great joy that can be experienced by changing how we relate to other people and the world at large. The method reduces the obstructions of early subconscious programming and holding patterns and increases our capacity within the hubs. Even when these patterns have worn deep grooves in our behavior, simply knowing that what they are and having the language to describe them provides some liberation. You are already everything you need to be, and the potential for everything you need is already within you. I discuss the four phases of human life, which Indian mystics connected with 1008 cycles of the moon in chapter 3. Childhood is the first cycle, the second is young adulthood, the third is middle age, and the fourth is our senior years. Eric Erikson, the developmental psychologist, his psychosocial model includes phases of life that correspond to the later phases occurring after childhood. See chapter 4. According to Erikson, young adulthood, our 20s and 30s, the second phase, is the reconciliation of intimacy versus isolation, a process of building one's own family in whatever form that takes. The alternative is to live in isolation. The third stage, generativity versus stagnation corresponds with middle age, approximately 40 to 65. In this stage, the primary reconciliation is one's contribution to the world and leaving it better. Activities like mentoring, upholding commitments, developing deeper relationships, and contributing to the next generation tend to lead to fulfillment. Stagnation results from isolation, self absorption, and cynicism. The last stage, integrity versus despair, corresponds with the first phase, which is a period of wisdom and reflection. Integrity in this stage is acceptance, a lack of regret, feeling at peace, and having a sense of success. Despair in this stage is expressed as bitterness, regret, ruminating over mistakes, and feeling unproductive. There's a Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. For as long as we're alive, it's never too late to begin the process of achieving greater fulfillment. It's also helpful to consider the bigger picture at any stage of life. Again, Bronnie Ware lists the primary deathbed regrets as, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the one others expected of me. Chapter 6. My point is twofold. It's never too late to focus on living a fulfilling life. And by making them conscious, you have the power to affect the reflexive holding patterns that block your capacity and potential. You'll notice that these regrets are simple. People don't regret not becoming billionaires or impressing people. In fact, it seems that those types of accomplishments are more likely to be tied to significant regret. So it's interesting here, as I'm reading this, the title is kind of like a standalone thing here. This is page 309 of the book. I definitely recommend rereading this if you have the book handy. It's interesting to read it because even reading it is very different than the experience of writing it. Something that I've discovered throughout this process is the amount of research and time spent absorbing the source materials is so much more significant to what the final outcome is that comes out of it. So there'll be like one sentence that was like a lot of reading and thinking and contemplation that gets distilled down to like one thought. So even reading it, I hark back to the process of actually contemplating this and putting it together. That was very impactful. It was very impactful for me to look through how the stages of Erik Erikson's development corresponded with the 4 phases of life. And now on the other side of having done this process start to finish, I'm really seeing it, and it actually like holds up in a way that's more profound than I knew when I first wrote it. And I wish this for you. And as alluded to here is it's never too late. It's never too late to reclaim these things. These parts of ourselves, patience, compassion, curiosity, without feeling like the urgency of like sort of panic, of not being safe or feeling ashamed, like that there's something wrong that needs to be hidden through the sort of like an elaborate configuration of like behaviors and conformities. Yeah, it's like it's interesting to me that now, there's this thing, where people are like, life is a real really sucks, that that's just part of what life is that it sucks and that it's hard. Um, and I don't agree with that. I think the things that suck about life are adapted, and our belief systems that we hold around them are the things that make them intolerable, that make them feel intolerable, that make it feel like life is in fact unbearable. Whereas there's so much grief. To love is to grieve and to lose. There's so much there are like active forces seeking to uphold adaptations in this world, to uphold the division within ourselves so that we are absolutely separated from our power, because it's really only interested in power. It separates us from love, our love for ourselves. It separates us from our pride for ourselves. It separates us from the feelings of pleasure and drive and joy and celebration, that we can just have those, that can just be a naturally occurring sensation that arises outside of us, and that safety is always going to be something that cannot be guaranteed by anyone. These systems that are in place that have us believing that if we save enough, if we have, it's like if we buy in more deeply, we stay safe. They created the lack of safety to begin with. And while there certainly is the reality that there are things that there are safeties that are supplied through, conventional means of like material possessions. It's absolutely, I'm not going to deny that. The chronic sense of panic, the chronic sense of hypervigilance, the chronic sense of trying to outrun and stay safe, that is the thing that we need to band together. And first of all, reconcile and reclaim within ourselves. Accepting an aspect of just the reality that we are fragile and that the world is the world. We require really specific conditions to survive, but that fact shouldn't create a sense of constant fear within us. We can maintain, and we can even expand our emotional capacity so that the suffering of others we can be present with without having to like say, oh, well, that's a lot, or I can't. Like, that's all about emotional capacity. And the thing is the more capacity we have to stay with others, even to stay with ourselves, it starts with being able to stay with ourselves. It starts with being able to stay with ourselves. This is when we start to look at like how we transform the world. It just starts by not looking away. And it starts by not looking away from yourself. And the stronger that becomes, the stronger the ability to not look away from others. I mean, I see it all the time right now with folks who are telling me, like, I can't pay attention to the situation in Gaza because I've got my own, like my own situation that in life that's overwhelming me. And that is exactly the thing about what is encapsulated in this methodology, which is like until we can actually expand, manage, and create a more dynamic internal sensibility, internal capacity, that our ability to expand into having a larger impact on the world will not be possible. So that's why it takes 309 pages to get to the point that this is ultimately about self-transcendence. But we must self-actualize before we self-transcend. And any shaming about not doing it in opposite order actually is like, kind of the, I don't know if it's like the snake eating. It's like it's just this thing that becomes this impossibility. And it's another thing that creates a lot of separation. Anything with shame, it's like you're supposed to be trying to change the world while you're still completely unreconciled about your own sense of feeling seen, your own sense of feeling loved, your own sense of feeling powerful, your own sense of having emotional capacity, your own sense of being able to feel a sense of physical safety and merit of your existence just for being, that you can have those things yourself. You can't give them away. Like RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else? So it starts with, as the Kristen Teeb song goes, the Kristen Teeb song first goes, I'm going to put myself first. And in closing on this, I will say that when I spent, my year of like walkabout time doing the exploration in Asia, I was really surprised that the ultimate emerging truth was this put yourself first model. Shocked me because it was so stigmatized to believe that that could possibly be it. How could it be? It's like I'm supposed. It's like this whole thing was like, well, you're supposed to be giving, and that's how. And you even see it where it's very present in the model, of becoming a teacher, being the interest of being like a yoga teacher before you're really, you've really developed your own practice. It's like the aspiration to teach preceding all else. There's a lot more I could get into with that, but for another time. So yeah. Yeah, you put yourself first so that you can give more. It's not even so you can. It's like give, like it's kind of like it's more just like an order of operations, is putting yourself first leads to being able to give more. And when you can give more, just a lot more comes back. It's the model. It's how it actually works. When we're trying to give to other people before we've actually established whether we're taken care of, it's just everything's always chaotic. Everything's always deficient. Everything's always feeling like that's where resentment is born from. Needing other people, being mad that other people aren't fulfilling needs when we're doing so much to fulfill theirs. That's what resentment is. Yeah, and I'm looking at you too, parents. Not as easy, especially with very young children up till about age 7, right? Require a very specific type of attention. All right. I'm sending you a lot of love. And I'm really Yeah, thank you for coming along with this. It's really meaningful for me. I was always conscious of this section, and I didn't really realize, it always felt bigger than it actually is, because my process and my experience of writing it was really big, and it's like, and there's a lot in this. I think that's one of the other things is the distillation. It's really tough because it seems like wild that this book could be a distillation. I mean, come on, I get it. But that this is this distillation, even the potency of every single section of this book being, just universally so far recognized as being, the analogy of like it's like eating one bite of chocolate cake that takes a weekend to digest, as one reader called said. It's different than a book. Something else. I don't know what yeah, I don't know what the differentiation is, but I'll just say that the potency of it is transformative. So just to even take in as much as you can and then sort of let it do its work on you and just stay with it. Let the subconscious absorb it. Let that work happen. That's all she wrote for today. Okay. So I will see you next time, and I'm sending you so much love, and I'm looking forward to it. Again, thank you for watching. All right. Bye.